Hello, and welcome to the Bayer Crop Science R&D Pipeline Media Update. I'm Carly Scuduto, Head of Media Relations for the Crop Science Division, and on behalf of Bayer, I want to thank you all for joining us today. The focus of our media call today is to share how our crop science R&D pipeline isn't just a glimpse of what's next for Bayer, it's the future of the ag industry. A dedicated media Q&A will follow the presentation. All are invited to submit questions to the Microsoft Teams chat box at the top right of your screen. Please be sure to identify yourself and what media outlet you represent. As a reminder, the focus of this call is on the Crop Science Division at Bayer's Research and Development Pipeline. If you have any questions outside of this topic, please follow up with a member of the Media Relations team following this call. Today's call may include statements concerning future events and financial results. Please refer to Bayer.com for official financial disclosures. Please know, this call is being recorded and transcribed. I'm joined today by Bob Reiter, Head of Research and Development for Crop Science Division at Bayer. And with that, I'll now hand it over to Bob.
Thank you, Carly, and welcome everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you today, and thank you for joining us. You know, for my team and myself, this is actually one of our favorite times of year because it's our opportunity to really talk about the hard work and the tremendous things that Bayer Crop Science is doing on behalf of farmers around the world. And it's always exciting for us to have the opportunity to showcase and talk about our innovation and to take your questions. So with that, let's go ahead and get started, and maybe we'll just go to the next slide and we can forward past the forward-looking statement that Carly already covered. So I do want to start with just one more time. I'm sure many of you are familiar and have heard us and others talk before about many of the megatrends that are driving the need for innovation in the market space that we call agriculture. So first of all, of course, on the demand side, you know, we have growing world population, considerations of ways to use crops differently, and then trends in terms of consumption patterns in terms of how people consume their food across the world and how that continues to change. At the same time, and probably the one I think that people don't reflect enough about, is the likely impacts that we will see over the next decades from climate change. And we talk a lot about climate change in the pure context of the planet warming and certain areas getting drier, but we've all experienced these significant gyrations and magnitudes of change. And just to impress upon you, one thing is extreme weather events that might have occurred 1 in 100 years in the past now are much more likely to occur 1 every 15 years. And that's a remarkable increase in the frequency of these large extreme events. And so building resiliency into our food supply is paramount, and we think innovation is a key element of that. We'll go to the next slide. One of the pleasures I have is that I lead a very, very talented organization and team here at Bayer Crop Science R&D. And we also, that talent has the backing of substantial financial resources. And so as Bayer Crop Science, our over 7,100 employees in R&D are spending roughly 2 billion euros each year to help advance science to the benefit of farmers and to also solve the world's problems in terms of how we can produce more and yet do that in a more environmentally friendly way by producing more with less. So that's the mission that we have. And the great part of it, of course, is that with that great responsibility and those vast resources that we have available to us, we take that responsibility that we have very seriously, and we're excited to showcase some of the innovation that we have going. So if we'll go to the next slide. But one of the things and one of our philosophies is that we don't look at inventing everything within the walls of Bayer. While we have a tremendously talented organization here that operates on behalf of our farmer customers around the world, we also realize that there are many, many opportunities outside of Bayer to help us in our mission in terms of serving farmers and customers. And so we have a vast network and many ways in which we work together with many different kinds of companies outside of the walls of Bayer. Some of those can be large multinationals, but in many, many cases, we work with small startups, universities, and other entities to help advance our science. because we're a strong believer that by leveraging this broad external network, we can advance our mission more effectively. And you can see just a small snapshot of the many different kinds of companies that we operate together with and in the various areas that we're working with them in. I might just highlight a couple for you just to give you a sense of the breadth. One of them is a joint venture that we have together with Ginkgo Bioworks out of the Boston area called Join Bio, where one of our main goals with Join Bio is trying to develop through genetic engineering of microbes that can help a corn plant fix nitrogen and reduce its dependency on synthetic nitrogen fertilizers. Another example would be Rantizo, which is a company that works in the drone space. Or it could be a company like Pairwise, which is helping us with our gene editing efforts. We have different kinds of relationships with all of these various kinds of companies, and it's a hallmark, I think, for us to be a partner of choice in the ag ecology. We'll go to the next slide. But within Bayer, we're very proud and we're very focused by leveraging our core competencies in these areas. And so you can see that without going into all the details of the numbers here, we have tremendous and world-class capabilities in breeding, in biotechnology, that help us to shape the next generation seed and trait products we offer customers. And in the areas of crop protection with our leading biologics portfolio and capabilities, and our world-class crop protection chemistry capabilities where we discover and develop new solutions for farmers as it relates to weed control, insect control, and disease. And then finally, digital, which will more and more shape and influence agriculture and is also shaping how we invent products and how we bring those products to the market to better serve our customers. We'll go to the next slide. So as I look at 2020 in the rearview mirror, I'm very proud of some of the accomplishments of the team. You know, we launched well over 430 new varieties and hybrids across an array of crops, including the large crops like corn and soybean and wheat and cotton, and of course across the more than 20 vegetable seed crops that we operate in with our Serenade to Reiter businesses. In addition, we had more than 200 crop registrations to help benefit farmers and be able to help protect those crops that they plant every day and every year. And also new formulations and much advancement in our actives in our pipeline. And then of course, on the biotechnology side, I'll talk to you later about some very specific products, but we continue to make very significant advancements in our biotechnology portfolio that will be significant upgrades for our customers. And then finally, more and more, the 160 plus million acres that we leveraged from our Fieldview platform, from our farmers' fields, is becoming an integral part of how we service our customers.
Bob, we have lost your audio. Stand by, folks. He does have a phone as a backup. He should be able to get his audio back shortly.
All right, I'm back with you.
Very good. Got you, Bob. Thank you.
Okay. Just verifying then that we are on the meaningful advancement slide.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. So sorry about the disruption there. So again, using digital, I think, is going to be a key enabler for us, and it helps connect our farmer customers and allows us to have more intimacy in the kinds of portfolio and products we develop for our customers. We'll go to the next slide. We truly have unmatched innovation in our pipeline in Bayer Crop Science. And so you can see the array of products that we are developing over the next few years that we're launching into the marketplace in terms of our seed and trait portfolio, in terms of our array of different crop protection products, and then also some of the products that we have planned for introduction in the latter part of the decade. This holistic portfolio really allows us to serve our customers in a variety of ways. And our goal is always to help our customers use these products in the very best way to help them economically in terms of getting a return on their investment with us, because farmers every year have the choice in terms of what they want to purchase on their farm, and then also to better serve them in terms of the challenges we face in terms of helping the agricultural footprint. So these innovations are really critical to our customers, and we're very proud of the work that we're doing and the fact that we continue to have a broad innovation pipeline across an array of different product types. So we'll go to the next slide. So let me walk you through a few examples in each of our various segments so you can get a better feel for some of the innovation that's coming to our customers. And we'll start with traits and our breeding pipeline. So first of all, I want to talk about soybeans, because soybeans are a very critical and continue to grow segment in overall agriculture. And we continue to see the importance of this crop in terms of being a key source of protein. Many years ago, we introduced the first trait with Roundup Ready for the soybean market for weed control. And weed control continues to be the critical trait portfolio for many farmers around the world, and in particular in North America. And we've made a number of advancements in this space, including the recent launch of the XtendFlex platform, which provides 3 different herbicide options for growers to use on their farm here in the US and in Canada. But we're not stopping there. And so what you see here are now in the mid-20s, and then at the end of the decade, where we will be launching our 4th and 5th generation herbicide tolerance systems for soybean, where we'll have 5 different ways of using different herbicides for farmers on their fields to be able to control and have greater flexibility in weed control. And by the end of the decade, we'll add a 6th by introducing PPO tolerance, another new class of chemistry that farmers will then be able to take advantage of. This is all part of our commitment to providing the greatest level of flexibility and help our farmer customers have different ways to address weed resistance, which is an inevitable part of farming as customers use different types of ways to control weeds, and weeds continue to work to survive and try to outsmart the solutions that we provide. We'll go to the next slide. In that same vein that we continue to provide upgrades on weed control for our farmer customers, we're also doing that for insect protection. Insect control is primarily a South American challenge for our farmers. And so we will be launching later this year our Intacta 2 Extend, which will be our 2nd generation insect protection product that will help our customers have broader control of insects in their soybean fields, and also increase the durability of the product that those products that they're using today. We also will introduce later in the decade an upgrade to this insect protection by creating more durability by adding brand new modes of action to control those pests that exist for soybeans in South America. And this is particularly important because in those tropical environments that soybeans are growing in places like Brazil, you can imagine that the insect populations are continuously mating year-round. And so they're going through multiple cycles of mating and the ability to potentially develop resistance to the products that we've developed for the market. And because of this rapid cycling that these insects go through, it's critical that we're able to keep ahead of that for the success of our customers to ensure that these technologies continue to operate successfully for the growers. We'll go to the next slide. One of the real exciting things is that we have developed an insect solution for a brand new class of insects, which is sucking piercing insects. And the target of our efforts was lygus and thrips, which is a secondary pest in cotton, but has become a much more important pest given the strong control we get from our Bollgard franchise. And this is a tremendous technical achievement for us because sucking piercing insects, because of the way they feed on the cotton plant, required us to invent the technology that really allowed us to be able to control a pest in a different way. And we're excited to be able to bring this to the farm for our customers. And you can see, if you look at the picture on the right-hand side, without too much effort, you can see that if you have Thrive On, that there's certainly a lot of increased cotton on those plants versus those that don't have the protection from Thrive On. a very clear demonstration of the value of insect protection in cotton, and certainly exciting for cotton growers in the US to be able to have access to this new technology to control a new pest in cotton fields. We'll go to the next slide. We also have groundbreaking technology as it relates to corn. In this instance, it's about below ground insects. Several years ago, we had introduced our first technology to control corn rootworm in corn. And that together with eventually became first our Triple Pro and then eventually Smart Stacks, which provided two different BT proteins to control those below ground corn rootworm pests. What's exciting about what we'll be bringing next is what we call Corn Rootworm 3, and what will be in the market served as Smart Stacks Pro in the North American market, or in the South American market, it'll be called our VT Pro 4 product. And this takes advantage of a brand new technology that's quite different because it is using what we term RNA interference technology. This is a technology that actually some of the elements of it won the Nobel Prize a few years back in terms of the discovery of how RNA interference worked. And we've been able to capitalize on that science and be able to introduce it into the plant to very selectively control the corn rootworm trait. We're very excited how it complements as a brand new mode of action to the existing products in the market. And our farmer customers, I assure you, are going to be very excited and pleased by this new technology as we're able to bring it out onto the farm in both North and South America. Go ahead, go to the next slide. Maybe one of the biggest products that we have in our pipeline is what we today are calling short stature corn. And we've taken a page out of Norman Borlaug's tremendous work that he did in wheat, in which we've used technology, in this case, various types of technology, to reduce the overall height of the corn plant. And this actually serves the customer in multiple ways by reducing the overall height of the crop without affecting in any way its yield potential. What it allows for, first of all, it allows for better management of the crop because a shorter crop allows us to bring equipment across the field more readily. And as we think about things like more precise nitrogen management, this is going to be a very critical part of an overall system of corn production. In addition, there are some things happening below the ground in terms of helping the crop be a better root producer, which we think will have benefits in terms of potential drought tolerance, and also may have some benefits in terms of nutrition, and possibly even with carbon sequestration, although we still have much more work to do to establish all of those details. But the one that's most visual and most visible to our customers is what we term standability. It's the ability of that crop to continue to stand, and at the end of the harvest season, have an ear of corn that can be picked up by the combine. Last summer, there was a tremendous wind event that went through major parts of the central Midwest, particularly in central Iowa and in parts of eastern Illinois, in western Illinois. And you can see in the fields here of a picture coming out of one of our locations in Iowa, is that the boxed areas are where we have our short stature corn, and the corn essentially in those rows is still standing. Very similar genetics are adjacent to the crop, except it's conventional corn, which is taller. And you can kind of see that feathered look and plants that have been knocked over from the wind event. And that means harvest loss for the grower. And these were wind events that were well over 100 miles per hour. I think that's a real testament to the technology and a great opportunity for us to observe what an improvement we've been able to make by creating opportunities to reduce the overall stature of the crop. My final point on short stature corn is that we actually have 3 different ways technically that we're doing this. First, we have a breeding method that we've been using, and that's actually allowed us to introduce the product concept first in Mexico. But our big focus overall will be on our biotechnology solution, which has some additional features that we really think are going to be beneficial for growers. Particularly, it allows us to expand our genetic footprint with the technology. And we have gene editing versions of discovery behind that. So multiple ways to create short stature corn for multiple markets. And we think this is going to be a true game changer in corn production down the road. We'll go to the next slide. I want to jump quickly to breeding and just talk to you about a brand new space that we're working on, which is what we call precision breeding. Historically, breeders would make crosses and then try to select the very best products. Not sure what that was. Try to select the very best products for different locations. What precision breeding builds on is the vast amount of data that we now have access to in both our farmers' fields and within our own R&D organization that allows us to literally design the corn crop or design the soybean crop for particular locations and particular environmental situations. We use artificial intelligence and make selections out of an almost limitless number of gene combinations to create these opportunities. And it's an exciting evolution in terms of breeding that we're now going to be deploying this over the next several years. We'll talk about this much more in the future, but it has the potential to be a huge step change in terms of how breeding is done and the leveraging of technology, in particular digital and data, to create a new solution for our farmer customers. We'll go to the next slide. And then I just want to close on this segment by talking briefly about gene editing. You know, gene editing is a natural extension of plant breeding. One of the things about gene editing is how do you best create value for customers? And our focus has been primarily on two areas, one of them being disease, and the second one being on productivity, because those are two key targets that will serve our customers well. And together with Pairwise and our own internal efforts, we've got over 200 targets that we are working on in terms of different genes. One of those examples is in the picture on the bottom right, where you can see how we've been able to influence the total number of rows of kernels that the ear produces. Increasing the number of rows naturally is part of the way to increase in the overall yield that comes off of each ear of corn, and therefore produces higher harvestability for our customers, therefore more yield. These are still in early discovery, but we're very excited by the potential of both the technology and the knowledge that we're gaining as we look to see how we can increase productivity for our customers. Next slide. So let's move over to crop protection and talk about both our crop protection traditional chemistry and our biologics portfolio. Go to the next slide. One of the things that I'm really excited with is some of the changes we made over the last several years in terms of how we do discovery for new candidate chemistries to serve farmers. We've worked and moved and transitioned from what I call a more traditional screening approach, where we were screening increasingly large numbers of random chemistries, and now are using a much more targeted, insight-driven approach, which uses a lot more and different data types to help guide our thinking and help guide our screening processes. So you can see some of the examples where we're using different biological screening methods, target-based screening, and also taking early looks at the safety profiles of the candidate chemistries that we're working on. The net output of this is that we have accomplished two things that are really important. First of all, we've increased the productivity of our discovery pipeline, but maybe more importantly, we're now able to advance brand new modes of actions in all of the key indications, which is really critical in terms of these chemistries being selective and successful in the market and serving customers in the best way possible. And this is to keep ahead of some of the challenges that Mother Nature always brings back to us as it looks for ways to work around some of the existing products in the market. We'll go to the next slide. So we've got a great track record in terms of the years of being able to advance various products into the market. And we have a very rich and deep development pipeline of different products that you can see listed down below. And I'll take the opportunity just to highlight a few of those for you. So if we'll go to the next slide. Here's an example of an insecticide, which is in the ketenol class. And this is a product insecticide that's targeted toward aphids and whiteflies. One of the really important features that it has is, first of all, it has very low use rates. And those low use rates ensure that we have a very safe product and a very efficacious product. The second element of it is the work that went behind this in terms of the safety profile as it relates to non-target insects. And in developing this product, it followed some of our new sustainability and development policies, where we're really meeting the challenges of regulatory, not just today, but those regulatory definitions of tomorrow. And it's exciting for me to see that we can be so successful in terms of providing a real valuable solution to our customers, and at the same time meet ever-increasing regulatory standards. And I think this is a win both for all of us as well as farmers out there. So we'll go to the next slide. In addition to that, we've been working very hard to do something that hasn't happened in a long time, which is the creation of a new herbicide with a brand new mode of action. Last year, we announced this new herbicide, and it's really, really special to us because it's the first new mode of action in this space in over 30 years. And the data we've been able to collect in the last year has allowed us to advance this product from phase 2 to now phase 3. And we're well on our way to getting it onto the farm before the end of the decade. And it helps to solve that ever-increasing problem of weed resistance. This particular product provides tremendous control of grasses and is a great complement to other existing chemistries in the market. You can see the very clean plot over on the right-hand side when we use this product in conjunction with another herbicide that helps to control broadleaf weeds that this chemistry is not necessarily designed to control. So that combination really, really provides tremendous weed control for growers and sets a whole new standard down the road. Next slide. We also continue to provide innovation incrementally in our pipeline. And one of the ways we do that is by continuously upgrading the formulations that we provide our customers with. So one of the examples of that is our Fox family of fungicides that serve our Brazilian customers that are dealing with soybean Asian rust, which is the key disease in that market. And our standard in the past has been Fox. And today we provide customers with our Fox X Pro product, which is the leading product in that space in terms of soybean rust control. But right on the heels of Fox X Pro, we now have Fox Supra, in which we're introducing a very new active ingredient that provides enhanced control of Asian soy rust and helps our farmer customers continue to enjoy the benefits of fungicide control use of Asian soy rust. And we'll continue to provide formulation upgrades in the future as well, because it's a key element of continuing to provide success for our customers. And it's important for us to continue to innovate in these spaces. Go to the next slide. Let me switch over quickly to biologicals. We've been doing a lot of work over the last several years in the biologic space. And in fact, we are the leading biologics company from a commercial perspective. And one of the things that we've continued to learn as we work on this space is where and how to help customers get the maximum benefit from biological solutions. The way we like to think about these biological solutions is not in isolation. And we don't think of helping customers use them all by themselves, but in combination with other products. We also learned and realized that it's very important to optimize timing and optimize use case in each of these instances. And by combining both with chemistry and then optimal use timing, a grower can have a great experience using biologicals. And it helps to ensure outcomes like no residue in different crops, depending on the goal of the grower and depending on the crop and the use case. We're also, of course, upgrading these products. And if we go to the next slide, here's a very clear example with our Serenade, which is one of the leading products in this space, and in fact is the largest selling individual crop protection biological. And Serenade is a bacillus based product, so it's a microbe, and it helps to control both some bacterial and fungal diseases, particularly in the fruit and vegetable space. One of the things we've been working on is to enhance the formulation. And by enhancing the formulation, we make the product more convenient and more effective for our customers. And we're launching in the next year with Serenade, our Serenade Soil Active. And so Serenade Soil Active basically is a low-use product, which is at a higher concentration of the spores that are present in the existing Serenade product. And it provides those benefits that I just described to the grower. So go to the next slide. So I want to kind of wrap up the technical section by talking briefly about data science. So if we go to the next slide. Over the last number of years, we've worked very hard to work with our farmer customers to adopt the Fieldview platform. And we're now on over 160 million subscribed acres with that platform around the world. This creates a data flywheel for us, which allows us to ingest customer data on what is happening on their farm. And that information is very critical as we combine it with our own internal R&D data to help drive our decision-making within the R&D portfolio, and helps us get better insights on the performance of our products, how our customers use those products, and how we can further optimize products to get maximum value for the grower. We'll go to the next slide. A couple of the ways that we can help our customers with that is, for example, with seed products, where we know that each individual field will respond differently to the choices of hybrids or varieties that should be grown on that field. But by taking advantage and leveraging customer data, we can do a much better job of providing recommendations to growers that allow the grower to get the best seed choice at the best planting density onto that field and increase their yield. And here in this example, you can see it where on average, we're getting a 6-bushel uplift by providing that recommendation based on data science and the data that we can extract from our customers in terms of the data coming off of their individual fields. It also allows us to help our customers better use different products like fungicides. In this instance, we're helping our customers know where and when they actually should use a fungicide. And in those points in time where we have environmental data and situations where we help our customers know that they should spray that fungicide, they have a high likelihood of getting benefit from that fungicide application. But we want to take all of this a step further by further optimizing use of our products. And in particular on crop protection, we see a great opportunity both in terms of helping our customers focus on an outcome versus the traditional where often chemistries were used in a way where the entire field was sprayed, or they were using timing that was somewhat prophylactic as opposed to predictive. And we think data science will play a tremendous role in providing much more precision in crop protection use in the future, driven by data and data science coming off the farm. We'll go to the next slide. Finally, I just want to close and talk briefly about sustainability and standards. And if we go to the next slide, one of the things I'm particularly proud of as a Bayer employee is the fact that we've made very strong commitments around the topics of biodiversity and sustainability in agriculture. We have a goal as a company to be carbon neutral, and in particular to help agriculture reduce its carbon footprint by 30%. We also are working very hard with our portfolio, and we're making great progress in terms of how our portfolio can help reduce the overall impact of crop protection. And then finally, and while I won't go into any detail today, we have a tremendously strong commitment toward our smallholder customers. And we believe innovation doesn't just serve large customers in large acre geographies, but that same innovation can serve smallholder farmers and benefit them as well. And we have a specific focus and effort around that. So go to the next slide. In partnership with academics, particularly in Denmark, we've been working to have an assessment of our current and future portfolio in crop protection. Because what we want to ensure is that we can measure and define where we are today with our portfolio and where the market is today in crop protection use, so that we can drive toward a more favorable environmental impact in the future. And one of the exciting outcomes of that analysis is the demonstration that our current portfolio at Bayer today is very favorable from an environmental impact perspective. And so you can see the Bayer portfolio in the green, and if you look at the bottom bar, you can see that the environmental footprint and impact of Bayer products is extremely low, and we're very thrilled by that. But we won't stop there. We want to be able to continue to drive that across all acres and help to serve the environment much more effectively and much more safely by the adoption of products that have safety profiles that look like the ones we have today and are even better ones tomorrow. Go to the next slide. So with that, I want to thank you for your time and patience in our little technical glitch. And we'll go ahead and I'll transition this back over to Carly, and she will open it up and be the moderator for Q&A. So Carly.
Thanks, Bob. As Bob mentioned, we're now ready to move into our Q&A. As a reminder, please submit your questions through the Microsoft Teams chat box, and please be sure to identify yourself and what media outlet you represent. Our first question comes from Elaine Silva from Globo Rural magazine in Brazil. She says, biological products for seed treatments in agriculture today represent 5% of the Brazilian market and respond to a demand for more sustainability in agriculture. Does the company see a future increased market scenario of biological products and seed treatments and a decline in chemical products? Will there be a balance, or will crop protection products continue to dominate the launches? How does Bayer intend to respond to this challenge in the coming years? Bob?
No, thank you for the question, and it's one I often get asked about how biologicals can make an impact, I would say, in agriculture, because I think there's certainly high interest. You know, I think one of the things I would say is we believe in kind of the balanced approach, right? We don't see that biologics today have the efficacy to fully replace the important features that chemical crop protection products provide farmers every day without substantial loss of productivity. However, we do see that there are benefits of being able to use biologicals to supplement and even enhance how chemical crop protection products get used. And if you look even at one of the most, in the seed treatment space, for example, there's 80 million acres of seed treatment out there on some of the larger row crops that contain a mixture of both biological and chemicals in that seed treatment. So I think that's a testament a little bit to how the two can work together. Where biologicals go in the future, I think is still open-ended. I think no one has learned how to master biologicals to best serve agriculture. I think the interest with growers is increasing substantially. I think that will help further use cases. And I think we're now taking on more technical ideas in terms of how we might help biologicals to work more effectively and be more efficacious for farmers as well. In the past, we've typically tried to rely on what Mother Nature has given us in terms of the variability of microbes, for example, and we would screen those microbes to see how they can help solve disease problems. In the future, we're looking at modification of those microbes using different genetic techniques to try to enhance those features and therefore have more efficacy coming out of biologicals. There are many, many startups also in this space working on these same problems. And so this innovation, and I think this desire to see biologicals have a bigger role, I think is going to continue to fuel that innovation. And I'm sure we'll see biologics having a bigger footprint and a bigger impact in the future. But I think it's going to be one that'll be balanced with the classic chemical products that we serve today.
Thanks, Bob. Our next question is from Isis at Bloomberg. Can you talk about what type of technology is used to create the short stature corn? Also, how do yields compare when that is expected to be commercial?
Yeah, so as I mentioned previously, we have three technical approaches. So one is a traditional genetic approach where what we've done is we've just used some existing variation that exists in corn germplasm to be able to harness that and create shorter stature corn products. The advantage of that, of course, is that we're using existing genes that exist in the gene pool of corn. The downside of it is that it's much more difficult to broadly deploy it across a broad array of hybrids in corn markets, and so it creates some limitations in terms of being able to serve customers in all sorts of different geographies with a broad array of products. And so that's why the biotechnology version, which is a more direct way of reducing the stature of the crop, is very interesting to us because it really unlocks the potential to be able to use and introduce short stature corn in pretty much all of the genetic backgrounds or various hybrids that we would bring into the marketplace. So that's one of the reasons we really like that one. And then of course, because genetically modified crops are not grown in all parts of the world, we've been working on gene editing versions as well. And of course, we still have a little bit of uncertainty on the regulatory framework for gene edited products in different parts of the world. But we do believe this will be complementary to the biotechnology version that we've created. So those are the three approaches. As it relates to the yields are comparable if conditions are normal. Now, when you have environmental conditions that cause the crop, for example, to fall over, which is actually something that happens quite frequently every year in corn production, then short stature corn actually has a yield advantage because you've got more plants standing and therefore more harvestable yield.
Thanks, Bob. Another question relating to short stature corn. This comes from Danielle Olivi at Noticias Agricolas. He says, about short stature corn, is it correct to say that the product will also consume less water and therefore be more resistant to droughts?
That's one of the things we're currently researching and trying to get a better handle on. We think that there's good reasons to believe that's true. First of all, you've got, excuse me, we have some evidence that the root system looks like it's a little bit bigger. A larger root system certainly helps in being able to help the plant be able to draw water from the soil. And then the second element is, if you just think about it from a pure physics perspective, a shorter plant doesn't have to use as much energy to pump the water from the ground up to the top. And those two features, I think, give us some reason to believe that there's going to be some benefit under drought conditions when you grow short stature corn. But these are things that we need to verify because, of course, the genetic background of the hybrid also has a significant influence on drought tolerance. And so that's why it takes a little bit longer to answer questions like that.
Thanks, Bob. The next one's from Jacob Bungie at the Wall Street Journal. He says, good morning, Dr. Reiter. Deere and other equipment companies are developing smart spraying technology that they say can reduce herbicide use by up to 90%. How will this affect Bayer's weed killer business?
Yeah, I think it's actually fantastic that we're seeing the development of these new technologies coming primarily from engineering, right? So technology where you're leveraging imagery, very high throughput edge computing technology to be able to more precisely apply chemistry in the field. So we look at actually through the same lens as maybe some of the equipment guys is, which is I think it's a tremendous opportunity. But we think that what's going to happen is we think that what will evolve over time is that we also want to see our business evolve from volume to outcome. And so we've been moving in this direction for a number of years now. We talk about outcome-based pricing, and we've been experimenting with growers on how do we basically work together to create outcomes and then share in the value of those outcomes with our farmer customers. And we have the same intention in the weed control space as it relates to the chemistries that need to be applied and the volumes that need to be applied. So we can, in one respect, people might look at it as a threat. I actually look at it as an opportunity for us to be able to work with those equipment providers, optimize the kinds of chemistry. So one of the things we're doing is we're working on low volume formulations that allow those types of equipment to be really, really effective and successful for our farmers. Because at the end, what we need to be able to do is serve customers in the best way possible with our solutions. So we'll bring all those things together, work together to create outcomes for growers, and I think that's our overall goal.
Thanks, Bob. Now we have a question relating to genome editing. Can you tell us something more about research and development in genome editing, in particular as it is applied to fruits and vegetables, which is banned in Europe?
Yeah, that's one of the areas that we continue to monitor very closely is the regulatory environment for technologies like gene editing in particular in Europe. We have a very large vegetable seed footprint, and a large part of that market segment sits in Europe. And that has made it a little bit more challenging for us to consider what are the right ways to approach the market with gene edited products. Having said that, we don't think that the gene editing regulatory environment in Europe is necessarily static. because we think that innovation is going to be needed if Europe is going to want to achieve some of the objectives of the Green Deal, for example. So we're exploring what that means for gene editing and what that means for vegetable crops. And at some point down the road, maybe we'll be able to talk a little further in terms of what our conclusions on that are and whether it's something that we think makes sense and what those kinds of products ought to be. But I think vegetables in general and fruits in general are excellent targets for gene editing. And the reason I say that is because some of the genes that we know, we have a lot of knowledge of what genes we would like to be able to manipulate, because we'd have to do that today in breeding to be able to bring customers highly flavorful, highly visually exciting products, right? If you look at tomatoes today and you think about the shapes and the flavor and the color and the sugar content of those kinds of products, we know a lot genetically behind that. But to be able to do that more efficiently and faster, and to be able to be more precise in doing that, gene editing would have a terrific role to play. But of course, we have to work through the regulatory piece of those kinds of technologies, and we'll have more to update in the future. But it certainly is a space that I think makes a lot of sense, and maybe for certain market segments where there may be, I would say, a little bit more of a closed loop for the market, there could be opportunities.
Our next question comes from Gil Gullickson at Successful Farming. He's asking, does Bayer have any timetable for introducing outcome-based pricing models on a wide scale for a commercial launch?
Probably a better question for my commercial colleagues. We have obviously been working on, this will be our third year now where we've been working on outcome-based pricing. We've learned a lot, but I also think that we have a ways to go in terms of fulfilling some of it. And one of the things we're working on is really from two directions. The first is farmers are very interested in outcome-based pricing models, and they're very interested in sharing in outcomes and sharing in risk. So there is interest and excitement on the farm in these concepts. What we need to work through, I would say, is two pieces. One is how we're adding value with those outcomes. And that's why it's really important for us to really have this digital focus, where we're not just focused on making products and then handing those products over to our customers, but how can we enhance the value with digital, and therefore together between the product and how you use that product, create a particular outcome, and then provide that to the grower. Because you have to create value, in my view, for outcome-based pricing to be something that a grower is really going to want to use, and you can really scale it in a broad way. The second side of it, of course, is risk management, because that's the other way you create value for growers. But to be able to do risk management well, you have to be good at your prediction of those risks. And I would say that's still an area where we have more work to do, and we'll continue to explore with our customers what makes sense in terms of risk management, value share, and other elements that will make outcome-based pricing a reality. So don't expect it to be on every acre next year, clearly. It's going to take a little more time than that, but there's a lot of interest, a lot of excitement, and I think a lot of value that we can create with it. And I think over the latter part of this decade, I think we'll see significant expansion of outcome-based pricing models and offerings to growers.
Thanks, Bob. We have a follow-up question from Isis at Bloomberg. She's asking you to comment on when you expect short stature corn to become commercial.
So our goal in the US is to have the first launch of the breeding version and introduce the concept to farmers in the US around 2023. The biotechnology version is targeted for deregulation later in the decade, probably around 2027 or so. So those are the rough time frames in terms of first introduction and then second generation technology in the US. Other parts of the world, we're also working on short stature corn using our breeding capabilities in South America and in Europe. And I would say in both of those geographies, introductions will probably fall somewhere between that 23 and 27 timeframe.
Thanks, Bob. The next one's from Leonardo Goddams at AgroPages. This is a question specific to China. Hello, Mr. Reiter. How is the release scheduled for Intacta soybeans in China? Do these recent releases of other GMO technologies indicate a trend towards openness? Does the speech of increasing local Chinese production also play in favor? And I believe by release, it probably means approval.
Approval, yeah. No, great question. I mean, obviously, China is such an important market for agricultural products, and therefore we always need to have certainty that we have regulatory approval for importation, particularly of soybeans for the China market. We have seen, I would say, in the last 12 months, improvements in approvals for products both in corn and soybeans. Whether that is, we think some of that is linked to some of the commitments made by China to the US government as far as related to some of the first phase of their trade deal, where this whole point of biotechnology approvals was an important point from the US government perspective. But I also think there's some influence here, of course, from the perspective of just China and the requirement it continues to have to be able to import protein in the form of soybeans. And also, of course, recently they had some challenges with their corn crop. So for China, of course, it's important that they have access to importation of crops and also productivity in order to ensure that they've got affordability of those crops. So I hope this near-term trend of import approvals holds, but you know, I guess we'll have to, you know, 1, 2, 3, and the more times we see it, the more times we'll feel comfortable with it. But it's certainly a good short-term trend that we're seeing, and we hope it extends into a long-term trend.
We have a follow-up question from Elaine Silva at Global Rural magazine. What other solutions does Bayer offer today to generate more sustainability in agriculture and intend to attend the requests of an increasingly demanding food consumer and concerned with protecting the environment? So maybe you could just summarize kind of what those key things coming regarding her question.
Yeah. I think generally where we're going and will continue to go is obviously first and foremost in my view is how do you ensure that we minimize the agricultural footprint? I mean, that for me is the best way agriculture can serve this concern of environment versus agricultural production. And so things that we can do to help productivity will continue to be at the forefront for us in terms of, I think, serving customers and conserving consumers. Having said that, though, we also want to ensure that that agricultural footprint is as environmentally sustainable as possible and also doing the right thing, right? And in that respect, introduction of products like short stature corn, which we think will have a big impact in terms of how the crop is managed and give us an opportunity to manage it in a way that ultimately will allow us to better sequester carbon, manage nutrients more effectively, minimize pesticide use overall. We think these are going to be important technical introductions. The kinds of crop protection products we're developing in the future, all of them continue to have improving safety profiles, and we're always driving toward lower use rates. And so this is also part of the mission. And then one piece I didn't talk about, but I think is going to be really important in the future as well is we're doing a pilot right now around carbon markets. And the idea there is as a company Bayer with our Fieldview platform and our access to customers and our connections back to food companies and others, I think we have a really unique opportunity to play in terms of building a bridge between customers who we can help sequester carbon on their farm and those that need to provide offsets in terms of carbon credits. And if we can see farmers be rewarded for behaviors on the farm that help to create and ensure sustainability or carbon capture, if they have economic benefit, that allows us to further innovate to help those farmers do that even better. So if a farmer is getting paid to sequester carbon, and today in the near term, they're going to get paid for that because they've introduced things like no-till or cover crops or certain rotational practices. But in the future, that allows us to invest in maybe changing how that corn plant actually uses nitrogen or how that corn plant actually has a root system that ultimately contributes to carbon below the ground. So by having economic return on investment for farmers, it creates economic incentive for input providers like ourselves to drive further on these topics around sustainability. So for me, it's pretty exciting kind of to see how these pieces come together. And then of course, the last one is digital. You know, more precise use of inputs is a key enabler to sustainability.
Thanks, Bob. Next question is from Margie Eckelkamp from Farm Journal. She says, good morning. Could you reflect on the one biggest benefit now realized from the Monsanto and Bayer teams and technology coming together?
I think for me, as I reflect on the last 3 years, I'll probably give you two key examples. I think the first is the recognition that farming is not one thing and not one decision. It's a continuum from the time you plant till the time you harvest. And being a company that has technologies that serve the farmer from that seed decision all the way to the harvesting of the crop, in terms of our portfolio in seeds and in traits and in crop protection and biological products, that ability to service the customer front to back, we believe is very important because it sets the stage, I think, where we want to take agriculture overall, which is not to just think about selling individual products, but again, it's this idea, it sets us up to really effectively be able to sell an outcome to a grower. And not just an outcome about weed control, but an outcome of a successful harvest. So having that full toolbox and being able to participate in all aspects of the farming operation more extensively, I think is the thing that we're working toward, and I think one of the big wins of coming together. I think the other piece is there are tangible examples for us of how it's starting to influence our decision making within our pipeline. We think of things like disease control, and we don't just think anymore about, well, I need to breed disease tolerance into my crop. I think about breeding disease tolerance and then what chemistry I'm going to further enhance that disease control with. I think about combining solutions on a seed in terms of seed treatments between biological seed treatments, which both companies were working on, together with chemical seed treatments. And then finally, I think about herbicide and weed control solutions, where we've invented the next generation weed control solution and first chemistry in over 30 years with a new mode of action. And we already have teams in biotechnology working on building a trait that can complement that chemistry. If we'd been apart, we wouldn't even be starting that work for another decade. So the fact that we can bring that type of innovation to the farm much, much earlier, because we now have the ability to work on both the trait in parallel to the chemistry, for me is just super exciting and I think helps us serve agriculture better.
Thanks, Bob. With that, I'd like to open it up for any closing comments that you might have before we wrap up the call.
Well, again, thanks for your time with us today. Hopefully you have an appreciation for the breadth of our portfolio and all the hard work that my team has been doing to serve ag and serve customers around the world. We got a lot more than this to talk about. We've got well over 100 projects across our entire portfolio, and we've only highlighted a few for you today. I think the last thing, though, I want to leave you with is, as a company and as a mission, where we're going, though, is ultimately really about how we help customers bridge the gap between feeding the planet and doing it in an environmentally responsible way, where we also serve the planet itself. And I think that mission and the importance of innovation and serving that mission is where we're headed, what we want to contribute to, and I think where we can create the most value for our farmer customers and also the most value for consumers around the world who consume food every single day. So with that, again, thank you for your time and for listening. Apologies for our little technical glitch. Good thing I guess we had the phone backup set. I warned the team that Dusseldorf sometimes has disruptions of the internet, and lo and behold, we got one. But thanks again, and enjoy the rest of your days.
Thanks, Bob, and thanks to all of you who joined the call and for your time today. More details on what we've discussed will be posted on cropscience.bayer.com, and a replay and transcript of this call can be provided upon request. This concludes today's Bayer Crop Science R&D Pipeline Media Briefing. However, our teams are always available to you. Please don't hesitate to reach out to me or members of the communications team for any follow-up questions you may have. And with that, thanks everyone, and have a wonderful rest of your day and a great weekend.